All right, Jeremy, what is going on, my man? Welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you here.
Yes. Yeah, thanks a lot, Jonathan. Appreciate it. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. We're recording this the first week of 2025, and from the last time we spoke and caught up, you've been crushing it. So excited to pull the hood back and just dig into what you're doing and talk about the operations and what you've been doing to scale. But it's been really cool to hear. But for me, yeah, busy. Still have my properties, and then we've been doing some new stuff around bookkeeping and property management. So that's been fun. But yeah, it's always interesting in real estate. So that's what we're going to
Yes,
talk about. So Jeremy,
absolutely.
real quick, if you could catch our audience up, high level overview on what your business looks like today. You do also have a W-2, which I think people will be interested in, that you've had such success, not even being full time, but I'll let you share the goods on that.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me on. It's been great kind of having our worlds intertwine a lot over the years and all the value you've brought to the community and just the STR industry in general. Super thankful for all of that and how you've kind of come into my life too. But yeah, I'm here in San Antonio, Texas. I am a full-time nurse, so I am working full-time while managing this. Um, Currently, my portfolio of short-term rentals under management is 21. Just had another contract signed this week, which is great, exciting way to start the year.
That's
Had
awesome.
three ones signed at the end of the quarter, and then now a new one at the beginning of the quarter. So um, everything's been great. Working only with the co-host model. I have one arbitrage property that I'll have my third year lease ending, and that was my very first one, 3 years ago. So I'll be letting that one move on and focus on the business growth.
I love it, man. How do you think about, I guess this is something I haven't talked to anyone about yet on the show. Like what a lot of people do when they're first getting into co-hosting and managing properties is they'll do specials, and this is common for a lot of different businesses, but they'll do specials for their first wave of people. And in doing that, then when they advance and get better clients or bigger clients that are paying more, they still have some of those like first clients that are, maybe still reaping some of those first time specials. I'm just curious, are you dealing with, not dealing with anything, do you have anything like that with any of your first clients? And if so, I'm curious how you think about it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So my very first clients, when I was stuck at four listings for like a year and a half, I actually still have them. So my very first one was brought to me from a friend from another mastermind I was in, and it's actually based in Lake Havasu, Arizona. So my only out of state, out of San Antonio is in Arizona actually. And, wanted to cut my teeth and I was like, oh yeah, I'll do it for 10%. I didn't know really anything about much of anything, but I quickly realized that what I did know is that I wasn't making any money on the deal. The market itself is very is difficult, especially for the kind of property that it was. So for a long time, I was kind of losing money on that deal, but learning a lot. Obviously, out of state management is totally different than when you can actually touch and feel the properties. Um, but probably I would say maybe about a year and a half ago or so, I did actually have the conversation with them about, bringing them up to my current rate of 20% and actually adding in my technology fee as well. So they were fine with it. We kind of just have kept moving on and she actually sold the property and I'm still managing it for the new people and, at the same terms and going on from there. Uh, Kind of moving it more into an MTR strategy though versus like standard because there's no pool or anything there at that property. And then the other one's a duplex, but honestly, it was actually the opposite. I tested the waters at throwing out a higher percentage, and I got them at 22%. So it's a duplex, one STR side and one MTR side with the tech fee and everything too. So I went from like 10% to like just shooting my shot and got a higher percentage there. But pretty much everyone
That's
else
awesome.
is about 20%.
Where do you see that, I guess, going in the future? Do you see that number staying the same, up, down? How do you think about it? Or, if people are
Yeah.
wondering, pricing.
It's definitely fluctuated a little bit already. And I will probably be shedding some more properties. Some of those earlier properties that are, smaller, one, two, even three-bedroom properties, are not really what I'm focusing on now. So yeah, I do anticipate, shedding a few more. Um, at in Q3, I think I shed two properties. They were both pretty much underperforming anyway. Um, Properties that I was doing my job, but the owners weren't necessarily doing their job as far as like design, upkeep, things like that. But yeah, so I see the number kind of fluctuating and stabilizing and then growing as I have only properties that I really want.
100%. I'd like to talk about time management a little bit. Most people listening to this probably, well, I won't say most, but I'd say there's probably people listening to this that are in two buckets: full-time people trying to get clients and figure this out, and then part-time people. So I guess first I'd like to talk about and hear from you just how you manage your time, or like how you think about being productive and efficient, or focusing on the 80/20, because clearly you
Hmm.
are, and you have two things going. So
Right.
I'd love to start there if you want to just kick us off high level, and then we could dig into it.
Yeah, so I guess a little more background about me. I am married. I do have a child. I have almost a 10-year-old boy. So, I do have all the family struggles. I'm not, doing this just all my free time is my free time. But I would say with my work schedule at the hospital, it's a little bit beneficial for me, where my schedule is from noon to midnight. So I wake up every day, see my son off to school. So I'm up every day at about 6:30. So I'm team no sleep here. I get home from work, I go to bed at like, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm up at 6:30. But from then on until I go to work, I leave for work about 10:45. It's, full on, what can I do to work in the business? So, and before I had my VAs, and we'll talk about that, of course, before I had my VAs, it was all me. And so I was, responding to messages, looking at listings, optimizing listings, doing everything. I'm sure your listeners know what that's like, all the things. The bookkeeping, the finances, the owner statements, all this stuff. Um, so pretty much Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday usually are days at the hospital. So I've got the mornings and then what I can get away with at work. Wednesdays are pretty much full open day. I can get a lot of stuff done. I have my team meeting with my VAs. Um, I'm staying in regular contact with my local assistant, who really has been the best thing to happen to me in 2024, because she's seeing the properties, she's going to the properties. I don't have to be the guy doing the QA, on the properties anymore. So my time management is not as, I guess, I'm not time blocking or anything. I'm not really to that point yet where I'm super strict about it. But I make the main thing, and what needs to get done on that day, I have that in my head, and I can communicate, the things that I can touch and do, write those down, and then otherwise, I'm communicating with my assistant to find out what she's going to see, which houses, the handyman where he's got to go, those types of things.
I gotcha. When you think about time management, mentioned you're not time blocking, but how do
Hmm.
you, I guess, prioritize your time in the sense of getting new clients versus working on your current operations versus
Hmm.
communicating with current clients? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so in my business, I've been lucky that the majority of my leads have been inbound. With my limited schedule, I'm not doing a ton of outbound calling prospects, things like that yet. So, my communicating with, prospects that I have already, I keep them in my CRM and I look at that every day and we'll see who I've not touched base with, recently. But generally, once my son goes off to school, I sit down at the computer, open up the tabs that I need to open up, with the OTAs, my CRM, things like that. Um, and then just get to work and see what needs to be going, looking to see what reservations there are, and if there's any outstanding items that need to get taken care of before those people arrive. Um, but generally, as far as communication with clients, I tell them when I'm onboarding them and even when I'm, selling them that they shouldn't hear from me more than, for two reasons. One, tell them how much money we made, and two, if there's like a major issue with the appliance. No news is good news. They don't want to be that involved. They want to be passive. So I actually use that as a selling point, and my confidence in that is what I think helps me sell those clients because they're like, oh yeah, Jeremy's going to leave me alone and just take care of business. So, um, but for right now we have some major issues that are involving you know uh, client involvement, such as freezing weather here. Texas doesn't have an option, so they're all communicating like, are you doing this with my house and all that. And maybe there's one house that has bed bugs that we're dealing with right now, but other than that, the clients don't get a ton of attention right now, which is how they like it.
That's cool. Um, I guess you mentioned that you're not doing a lot of outbound.
Hmm.
So that might be shocking for people in any business that are looking for some type of clients. Can you just talk about how you think about like delivering value out there that makes people
Hmm.
want to reach out to you? And I think this is good for, people looking to do co-hosting, but also for like clients or people with properties that are thinking about like what should I look for on the internet to know if someone is knowledgeable? Because for example, like if you're in a Facebook group and a real estate owner makes a post, hey, I'm looking for a manager, I'm looking for a co-host, they're gonna get 100 comments and 100 DMs. So it's like you're doing stuff online, Jeremy, that I think owners and people just in general could probably look at to see, okay, this guy's legit, he's doing the right thing. So what do you think about from that standpoint to attract people who potentially become clients?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I guess it's a little bit of uh, I guess a crutch, but to say that I don't have time to do outbound, I'm sure I do, and I could find it. Like, I hear you listeners telling me there's time. I hear you. Um, so I really focused on what would make me, I guess, look good online. So I really optimized my Google My Business page. I spend, a good amount of time every week kind of looking at that, seeing if there's a post I can update, add new photos, things like that. I'm close to 100 five-star reviews on there from, friends, family, guests, clients, really anybody that I've had a conversation with. I just ask them, for a review. And so that helps as well with the Google Analytics and everything too. Um, that also leads to my website. So people can find me on Google by searching, San Antonio Airbnb manager. It'll take them to my Google My Business page, which links to my website, which has a form on it that they can fill out with their information that takes them directly to my calendar. So it's a whole workflow automation, and that's how people basically just get on my calendar. So I don't lose as many lookers when they come to my website. They fill out the form and they're prompted to have a conversation with me already. Um, but yeah, with that in mind, I am doing, outreach in the Facebook groups. I'm fortunate to be in a great mastermind, the STR Secrets Mastermind, and a lot of those people are in some of those larger Facebook groups as well. And if someone sees something for San Antonio, they're popping my name in there, and a bunch of people will generally jump on to pop my name, which is nice. Um, but locally, it's about providing value and not really selling, and people will then begin to see you as the expert. So I guess the keys to my success have just really been a good professional online presence, providing value and not expecting, anything in return, um, and really making it easy for people to communicate and get in touch with me.
That's awesome. When you first got into this, is there anything that you were doing that now you don't do or wish you would have known when you first started? And part of that could be talking to clients, but what few things or thing comes to mind just as you think through like working with clients and managing properties and all that?
Yeah, honestly, one of the biggest things that I should have done earlier was hire VAs, hire local help. and really focus on that because I think I had close to 15 before I even had any help. Yeah, 15. And I think people when they get to 4 or 5, they need to start hiring help for sure. And I was way behind.
Wow, that's amazing. So, on
Yeah.
that note, can you walk us through what your team looks like now?
Yeah, so I have a local assistant. She's a stay-at-home mom, former military. Actually, was a referral from a friend from back home in the DC area where I'm from, who lives here in San Antonio, and she's been amazing for the group. But now I also have three Filipino VAs as well, two that, and all of them I've hired with your blueprint, pretty much.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
so. Yeah, so the first two I hired around the same time, um, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. So we're really getting into a flow now, making things happen and kind of getting comfortable with expectations and everything. And then this third one, I found more specifically with skills that the other two don't have. So a lot of actual Airbnb experience versus like customer service, specific CRM type of stuff. But yeah, so it's me and the four of them, and we get it done.
I love it.
Yeah.
How do you think about schedules? And I promise guys, this isn't a like pitch of any type or like self promo. To be honest, I actually forgot that we did help you out with some training
Yeah.
on VA stuff. Um, but that's cool to hear that you've implemented that and that it's working and growing. So, something that I fiddle around with even in my own business and always ask other owners and co-hosts on this show is just like scheduling and formatting if you have multiple VAs.
hmm
And I always get different answers, so I'm always just curious. So for you, you said I think you have four VAs.
Three VAs.
Three VAs. So, can you walk us through how you think about like scheduling them, who does what, if they're carved out by different buckets of property, just like the
hmm
operations of having three people across the portfolio?
Yeah, I'm still learning as far as best practices go from others, but the way I kind of landed on setting it up is really trying to make myself not the one answering the calls, answering the messages. So looking to see what days of the week and what hours is the most, guest communication happening. Um, so even today, most of the coverage really ends at midnight. So nighttime, if anything pops up, like that's me, but that's few and far between, thankfully. So right now I have my VA. My first one comes on at 8 a.m. and goes, I believe, until 5. And then the second one overlaps a little bit from 3 p.m. and I believe goes till midnight. So I've got those two pretty much running. I think Monday or Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe, are actually their weekends. And then I have one the way they work just because their personal, the things that they have in their life. One works Saturday and one works Sunday. Still not getting a ton of guest communication on the weekends. Once guests arrive, they're settled in, they're happy. So I have one that's on during the day, usually I believe from 8 to 5 as well on Saturday and Sunday, and then starts all over for the week. But my local assistant, I mean, she pulled 12 hours yesterday, so she's balls to the wall. She's really going out and just doing, which is great. Takes a lot of initiative, and just solves problems for herself and keeps me posted about things that are necessary. Um, but I'm sure as this third VA kind of gets more involved in actual guest communication and such, the shifts will change and probably be more standard. Because right now, the two of them, they kind of flip flop a little bit, which is fine by me as long as there's coverage. Um, this new third one is more doing Airbnb specific, OTA specific roles and jobs with optimizing the listings, learning and utilizing IntelliHost, RankBreeze, systems like that.
I gotcha. That's awesome. And you mentioned that you think now like a sweet spot number for someone bringing a team member in is like four or five. Um, Could you talk about that a little bit more? Just because, people out there might be listening and have one
Yeah.
property and wondering if they have, enough work for them or have, like you had, 15 or 20.
Yeah, I think the reason that I didn't even look to hiring anybody was purely selfish and wanting to keep all the money. But then I didn't have any of the time. So and it was not good and not fun. And I've got my family, and I want to make sure I'm saving time for them and not constantly having to check, messages and such. So really, had I hired my first VA at 4 or 5 listings, it would have freed up that time that I could have grown faster. So I was stuck at those four, listings, one of which was an arbitrage of my own for about a year and a half, and I was just stuck in that and couldn't really do you know, the selling, the communicating, the outreach. I didn't have the time to focus on the Google My Business page and the website and all those things because I was in day to day, just all the day to day stuff and couldn't grow. Um, so had I hired even one person to take on just guest communication even, that is the thing that took most of my time. Um, if people really sit back and pay attention to what they're spending their time on, whether it be actually a formal like time blocking, or just sitting and thinking and making a note like this is taking me a lot of time, I should probably offload this, then you'll quickly realize what you can offload first. Guest communication is a lot of that too. Um, I've been focusing a lot on buying back my time, listening to Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, and it's all in there as far as like offloading those low dollar tasks so you can focus on the things that'll actually move the business forward. So
Yep.
that's why I say 4 to 5, because after that, then you spend way too much time at 15 properties, they have so much to learn about all those properties. It's like drinking through a fire hose, that's that whole thing.
For sure. I guess just before we kind of move on to another topic,
Hmm.
like it's something that I remember feeling, and when I talk to people, they have the same feeling of like not being able to justify it or give off control. So, is there anything you would just say to those people that are thinking like, yeah, I have this business, I do everything in it, but I make money and like that is what it is. My time has a certain value,
Yeah.
but like it's important to do this. What would you say to that person that is debating it?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Before I had any VAs, like, I was obsessed over, checking the apps, checking the cameras, checking, the noise sensors, like checking everything because it was all on me. But as soon as I offloaded those tasks, I don't do it anymore. So I mean, if you're out there listening and you're like, that's me, I spend all the time looking at all those things on a daily basis. How great would it be if somebody else was doing that you trusted and you didn't have to spend that time doing that? At some point in your business, you grow to the point where you don't want to be doing those things. You kind of learn what you enjoy about the business. You learn the aspects of the business that really, fire you up. And, if looking at cameras is your thing, cool. Hire your VA to do something else. But, there are definitely tasks that you would be much happier not doing. And there's plenty of people, foreign or domestic, that would be happy to do that task, and sometimes better than you. But at the same time, 80%, not done by you is 100% awesome.
100%. Such good points. I guess just last question on operations of team and VAs are there any specific things that you make sure they have? Like I know you mentioned there's a lot of properties that they have to manage and know about. So is it spreadsheets that you have the property details organized or a CRM or something like that? Like operationally, how do you actually stay organized so that
Hmm.
if a guest has a question, the VAs can answer it without having to reach out to you?
Yeah, and that's the big thing is I didn't hire VAs to still be the bottleneck. So letting them have the information and reminding them that you do have this information to find an answer. So um, through the STR Secrets Mastermind I'm in, they have a great master cheat sheet, they call it. And so I basically just took that document and it's got rows and rows and rows of information about each property. And they're editing and they're updating and they're adding to it so they know, all these different things. And as specific scenarios come up, that you can't really prepare them for or teach ahead of time, they're taking notes, writing SOPs, about, things such as when to allow an early check-in or a late checkout and what to do if they are coming early and resetting the lock codes and all that stuff. Um, so really, we keep all of the documents in folders in Google Drive that they have access to. I use LastPass to share passwords so they have access to all the different systems and tools that we use. We're using Monday.com for tracking things like insurance claims. We're using Safely right now for that. Um, we don't do much with air cover, but mostly with Safely. We use it to track maintenance issues, to make sure that those things are getting handled and everything too. Which guests still need to be screened with a secondary screening, which guests at certain properties still need to sign their rental agreements, things like that. So, we have the ability to track those things in Monday.com, and the VAs are the ones monitoring those things too.
Awesome. Really cool. Really great explanation. Um, I'd like to talk about some specifics in the business and how you think about like handling them for your owners. So a few specific questions we've gotten related to like amenities. One is for fireplaces. Curious if you have a stance, wood or gas or something else for your properties.
That's something I've never really had a stance on. A few of my properties do have indoor fireplaces, and I believe they're all gas. But at the same time, I don't believe we even offer the gas key to turn on the gas at those properties.
Oh, got it.
So, and no guest has ever mentioned like, how do we turn on the fireplace? Like, it's just never come up, which is maybe the reason that I haven't even thought about it because it never comes up. And I find that something like that, like, oh, I wish we'd had a fire tonight, that dissatisfaction can really be, I guess, switched and turned into a positive just by providing, excellent hospitality and customer service and everything too. So yeah, no one's ever mentioned fireplaces to
Okay.
me.
I love it. The next
Yeah.
one, TVs in bedrooms. Is it a requirement or not?
I would say it's better to have it and the guest not need it or ever turn it on than for a guest to want it and not have it. We go with those great Roku TVs, the TCL Rokus in every room we can. Um, because they're the easiest. The remotes are the easiest to use. My thing is, if a person from Walmart can't figure it out, it doesn't belong in a house. You know, so no fancy coffee machines, nothing like that. It's got to be easy to use, or I'm going to hear a question about it, or my VAs are going to hear a question about it. So yeah, TVs in rooms, Roku, easy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say you finish with a guest and a three-star review comes in. What is your thought process on that and how to handle it if you take some sort of action?
Yeah. I yell and scream for about 5 minutes, and then I try to focus on, the actual review. Because if we're being honest, usually there's some shred of truth in a bad review. There's something that we could do better, something that can be, learned from that. Um, Fortunately for me, those don't happen very often. I've got a 4.95, I think, overall, across my portfolio. So generally it doesn't happen often, but um, it's usually for uh, the listing wasn't clear about something, and for example, we have a couple properties that have a separate little casita, a little ADU on the property, and one person didn't read the listing, of course, but we also didn't make it super clear that it's detached. There's an extra bedroom there. Like they weren't happy that their kids were going to be sleeping in a separate space. Um, but as far as like physically how to take care of it, I will try and dispute them with Airbnb. I've gotten really good at going to ChatGPT, and I have a I guess a conversation with ChatGPT that includes all of the review policy, and I'll take that review, throw it in there, and say, give me 3 to 5 things that potentially could help me get this review removed. Um, it's happened. It's worked a couple of times, thankfully. Um, but in the end, a lot of them, it's just their experience. That's what Airbnb is going to say. So it comes down to how we respond to it. So, we'll leave a good, thoughtful, not too wordy, not too long review, to that as well. We respond to pretty much every review, good and bad. So it's not going to stand out that this review has a response. Be like, whoa, what's that about? So it doesn't show up as easily.
It's a good point. You don't want to highlight it, but
Right,
people are curious, and sometimes if you can just explain that something was like a one-off random situation or
right,
has already been fixed, then they can overlook it in book. So
right.
that's uh that's cool. Um Something that I'm more personally curious about lately with our properties is like I have been in this game, I don't even know, 5 years now. Like furnished rentals, a little over 5 years. And only once have I ever actually submitted an insurance claim
Mm,
with my like STR insurance provider. I've done a few through Airbnb Air Cover and it's been pretty good. We document everything. So this is just me and you talking here. Like it had me debating if I even need the STR insurance policy. Like if I have general liability and homeowners insurance and then I have air cover, like it's not a big expense, but across a full portfolio, like you weigh things. So I'm just curious for you, like, do you find yourself submitting insurance claims outside of air cover often, or are your clients doing that, or not?
yeah, so here's kind of my response to that, and I'll kind of equate it to, the current freezing weather we're having here. I would rather my client be mad that their water bill was a little high because we were dripping faucets for days and days than their house ruined and they have, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in claims, lost revenue, and all that. So
Hmm.
insurance, you just got to have it. That's my
Well, I'm
opinion.
I'm
Like,
just specifically talking about STR related, like
yeah,
guest
no, no,
damage
no.
insurance.
I
If a
because
pipe goes,
otherwise,
that would be covered. Like I agree, you need
sure, a
general
pipe, yeah,
insurance for the property, like for
right,
storms or damage, things like that. I'm just isolating it to guest damage.
sure. Yeah, I still think it's important for, right now, I'm now dealing with my second property over the last 2.5 years to have bed bugs. And that's not cheap at all to fix, especially if it doesn't get fixed the first time. So we have submitted, um, the first owner did not have a bed bug policy on her STR insurance, so she was out of pocket for that anyway. And it required a second treatment after, the first one didn't completely work. So guests show up after the treatment, they get bit again, and that's another 3 weeks down to then treat it, this time with heat. So, but the second people that I'm dealing with right now, they're with Proper, which I recommend Proper. It is the pricier one, but I know many people that have had great experiences with getting paid out. So yeah, not a plug for them, but I think they're great. Anyway, but they have bed bug insurance, so they'll pay, and they'll actually pay loss of revenue as well. And
Wow,
another property had a burst pipe, not freeze related, in their ceiling, that happened during a guest stay, and the guest conveniently didn't tell us about it. They just checked out and like
what the
left and didn't
hell?
even say anything. So we show up and there's water and ceiling light fixtures on the floor, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we didn't think you needed to know." We're like, "What?" Anyway, they also have Proper, and they've been easy to get the whole process fixed, and they're going to pay out, lost revenue. We had to cancel, I think, 8 reservations over like the 2 months it's taken to fix the house. And then even some of those dates that weren't booked, we'll get some loss of revenue back as well. So, you know, I think it's kind of paid for itself already for those two properties, just in loss of revenue recovery as well. So I don't know. I would say it's probably just smart to have it, and leave it at that. Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. What is the process for bed bug remediation, fresh in your mind, as far as like
Yeah.
cost and activity?
Yeah. So of course you have to get it first, inspected. Rarely has a guest like claimed bed bugs without like significant evidence and bites and such. And this one happened over Christmas, which was terrible. But these guests were wonderful. They were fantastic. They left a glowing 5-star review. Anyway, it was awesome. I see you itching yourself like you got a bug or bite or something.
Making
But
me
yeah, so the
big.
process, yeah, exactly. So the process really it's pretty straightforward. You inspect. The prep work ahead of the treatment is probably the most important thing. And so my cleaners will go in, do that for a fee as well. And then you can either use chemical treatments or heat. That's why they always recommend to launder everything in high heat, wash and dry, because they can't survive extreme heat. So if I were to ever recommend a treatment to my hosts or to my owners, it would be the heat treatment. They bring in these huge heaters and they just heat your house up to like 130 degrees or something like that. So there's a lot of prep involved in that as well. You got to turn off the gas and everything like that too. But it's very thorough. Like it penetrates the walls, it penetrates all the furniture and kills them just dead. And there's no issues after that. But the cost can be significant for that on the electrical side and also on the treatment side, 5,000 plus dollars, not to
Wow.
mention, any lost revenue that you're not able to recoup. Because I think right now proper is only paying up to 7 days, which is strange because you're going to be offline for 3 weeks, but that's the
Why
only
three
issue
weeks?
we're having.
That's how long. Like, let's
Well,
say it has to be 3 weeks, or could it be shorter?
so I think with heat treatment, technically it possibly could be shorter, just because you're just killing them in every stage of their, from larva to adult and all that stuff. Whereas the chemical treatment is similar to, your normal pest treatment, just more focus on bed bugs, where it'll kill them at certain stages of their growth. So then eventually they aren't reproducing basically. So you do have to wait that period of time to let, that just work and the life cycle to happen. And then they just die. So you have to go in, do all the cleaning and all that stuff.
Got it. Basically, you don't want to deal with it, but if
You
you
don't
do,
want to
you'd
deal with
rather
it.
have insurance.
Yes, 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 yes. You do, yeah.
Okay.
The insurance side aside, but you want to not cut any corners with that because if they come back, you're doing it all over again.
Okay. Changing gears here a little bit. Last
Yeah.
few questions I have are about bookings and channels other than Airbnb and Verbo.
Hmm.
We've been hearing more guests on the show talk about different platforms, Expedia, Google. Someone even yesterday was talking all about how they were hyped that their properties are now listed on Marriott. So curious if you have ever thought about it, if you're doing anything outside of Airbnb and VRBO now, and like if you are, how much of your business does it make up?
Yeah, so my PMS is with Hospitable, and so through that we are listed on Google Vacation. Haven't gotten anything from it. I don't really know if there's anything I can be doing, but at the same time, I don't really know if a lot of people are getting much from Google Vacation Rentals. Um, but so Airbnb and Verbo are my two primaries. Early on, through another mastermind I was in, I was I had two properties on Booking.com. One of them still is, and I do occasionally get a Booking.com booking. Um, it's not they are generally higher price bookings, but at the same time, this the whole process, the communication, the type of guests generally being international. sometimes has some inherent, hiccups with it as well. Um, but at the same time, um, if you don't do it and pay attention to it, you can do it very wrong. You know, Booking.com is notorious for stacking discounts on top of each other. So people could get a mobile booking discount on top of a week-long discount on top of a like business travel discount or something like that. And suddenly you're making like nothing. You're giving the property away. Um, so I would shy away from Booking.com, especially in the States. It's really not a huge major player. Um, Unless you see in your market that there is a lot of like international business travel and things like that, it could be beneficial. But Airbnb in San Antonio is king. Even being on Verbo, I would say Airbnb is, gosh, like 90% of my bookings. I have a direct booking website as well. I try to funnel people there as much as possible. If they're a if they're a savvy traveler, they might notice the name of my business in my inquiry message and stuff and Google it and find it that way. But
Mm.
generally, if it's a direct booking, it's me who has led them to that site.
Got it. Are your
So
direct
yeah,
bookings mostly from repeat guests at the moment, like following up with them or emailing them in some way?
yeah. So I do have a follow up email sequence, text message sequence. I think it goes over about 200 or so days. Um, And every, couple of weeks, I'll go in, see which guests have checked out and add them to that sequence. That part is not automated. I have to manually add them through my CRM. I'm using a Go High Level affiliate called Elite 360. Um, it's really, really, really great, but allows me to have those automations as well. Um, and yeah, but I do get some repeat bookers. San Antonio is a lot of, I wouldn't say one-off travelers, but a lot of people come in from the surrounding cities, surrounding states, Oklahoma, Mexico, things like that, and they'll send their friends and everything too.
That's awesome. I think we covered most of the topics I wanted to. Is there anything that you'd want to say to the audience, or just anything maybe you've learned or been top of mind with lately?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about, the end of the year and how crazy 2024 was for me growth wise, I really thought about, what was it that really moved the needle for me? And a lot of it has honestly been being in the rooms with the right people like yourself, people that know more than you about certain topics, people that are, in the trenches with you, maybe a few steps ahead of you, and learning from those people, really kind of, riding on their coattails a little bit, but at the same time, a lot of people in this industry, I've been fortunate, are very giving and really interested in providing value to people, that are coming up, like myself. I'm happy to talk to newcomers and everything as well. So, I really would encourage your listeners to, get involved in communities, find a mastermind that they jive with the people that, they feel like they can learn something from, and just even form a little local mastermind of your own. Just get some hosts together just to share ideas, and a rising tide raises all ships kind of a mentality, and abundance mindset will really help you grow your business, and along with everybody else's.
100%. Jeremy, really appreciate it, man. You've
Yeah,
come such
absolutely.
a long way from when we first started talking that it's just
Yeah,
incredible to hear. I mean, we probably met probably 3 or 4 years ago at least.
I think so. Yeah,
Could be longer just through social media. Still have never met in person, which
right.
is how I guess all this internet stuff really works, which is funny.
Right.
But just really appreciate you coming on and spreading some knowledge. And it's been fun to watch your journey and excited to keep watching as you add units and keep
Absolutely.
developing.
Yeah, I'll bring the fam down to Columbia sometime. Okay.
That'd be great. We'll do the holidays.
Yes,
Jeremy,
sir.
thanks so much, man.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
You got it.